All right. Ready for a deep dive? Today we're looking at a story most of us think we know.
Abraham, Sarah, Isaac. Classic, right?
Exactly. But Genesis, chapters 23 and 24, there's some seriously deep stuff hidden there.
Deeper than you might expect. Yeah.
We're using an episode of the Scripture Straight Talk podcast as like our guide for this one.
Good episode, that one.
Oh, they brought up some things I'd honestly never even thought about.
Yeah.
So get ready to uncover some like emotional layers to this story.
And we might even see how it connects to us, even today. Amazing how these old stories still do that.
It's true. They really do. Like, take the way they handle Sarah's death in this. It'd be easy to just kind of like speed past it.
Just a sentence, move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Genesis and this podcast both, they really linger on Abraham's grief here. Powerful stuff.
It's more than just powerful, though. It's this window into their culture back then. Owning land. It wasn't just about, having a place to live.
Right.
It was about legacy, your family's future, like a tangible connection to it. So Abraham buying a burial place for Sarah, that was a huge GE statement about their bond, her importance, even in death.
Okay, that makes so much more sense now. Like, imagine if today someone was like, I have to bury my loved one on my family's ancestral land, even if it was incredibly difficult.
Exactly. It takes on this whole other weight, doesn't it? And then you've got the whole interaction with the children of Heth.
Oh, yeah.
They seem sympathetic to Abraham's loss, but there's this, this distance there.
For sure.
Like they recognize he's hurting, but they can't fully get it.
Which is such a human experience, isn't it? Like, even with good intentions, you just can't always bridge that gap when someone's grieving. Makes you wonder, have we been on either side of that in our own lives?
Something to think about. But hey, speaking of relatable, let's move on to the matchmaking mission. This podcast, they make Abraham's servant, the one who has to find Isaac a wife, so relatable.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like ancient high-stakes matchmaking, but with way more camels involved.
Way more camels.
But you really feel for the guy. He knows this isn't just finding Isaac someone to hang out with,
It's a whole lineage, a promise riding on his shoulders.
Exactly. And the prayer he prayed, who prays with that level of specificity these days? He's like, okay, God, I need her to water all 10 of my camels.
That's not asking for a sign. That's dictating the terms.
It really got me thinking about how I approach prayer. Do I trust enough to be that specific? Or do I keep it vague, just in case?
That's the mark of a good deep dive, though.
Yeah.
You see a familiar story, but suddenly it's making you question things.
It really is. And that brings us to Rebekah. I've always kind of pictured her as just like a passive character in this whole thing.
Just shows up at the well because it's her destiny, right?
Exactly. But this podcast really changed my perspective on that.
It's easy to not really think about her side of it. But when you actually look at what Rebekah does, she becomes so much more interesting. Like, she doesn't just agree to draw water for this one guy who's thirsty.
Right.
She's like, oh yeah, I'll water all 10 of your camels. That's not just being polite. That's some next level generosity and hard work.
Seriously. Can you imagine being that strong and willing to help a stranger? Makes you wonder if we'd pass the whole watering all the camels test,
Right. But it's more than that. The podcast pointed out how that actually tells us something about Rebekah. Like, even before she knows about this whole matchmaking thing.
Oh, interesting.
It shows us her kindness, how she's willing to go the extra mile. Those aren't qualities that just pop up out of nowhere, They're part of who she is. Maybe think, what are the little things we do each day that actually say a lot about us?
Okay, wow. Getting deep here. But in a good way. It's like this story is suddenly reflecting back on us.
Totally. And speaking of unexpected stuff, remember Laban pops up in the story like, hold on, not so fast.
Hey, like the podcast writers needed to add some drama to the mix.
1 minute, everything's falling into place, divine appointments and all that. Next minute.
Rebekah's brother's trying to hit the brakes.
Exactly. And you could just be like, oh, Laban's the obstacle here.
Yeah.
But the podcast made this really cool connection back to how he acts later in Genesis.
You mean with Jacob and that whole Rachel and Leah situation?
Yes. Not exactly someone you want planning your wedding.
Not at all. Haha.
So looking back at this whole let's delay things bit with Rebekah, it's like we're seeing that part of him already there, those manipulative tendencies.
It's like that saying, how someone treats others is a reflection of them, not you. Ugh, we've all met a Laban at some point, haven't we?
Definitely. Someone who, even if they think their intentions are good, they just throw obstacles in your path.
Ugh, the worst. But like the servant in this story, sometimes you gotta just stay focused on the bigger picture. On that promise, even when roadblocks pop up. Speaking of promises, let's talk about Isaac. It'd be easy to just see him as the one who, gets a wife here.
Right. He's just receiving.
But the podcast made a point of highlighting the emotional stuff he's going through, too. It's easy to forget Isaac's still grieving, his mom during this whole matchmaking thing.
Oh, absolutely.
The podcast really brought that out, how it's not just this, happy love story. There's real sadness there, too.
Yeah, imagine that weight, that loss. And
Oh,
everyone's
true.
so focused on finding you a wife.
Right.
Changes how you see that moment when he finally meets Rebekah, doesn't it?
Totally. Like he's stepping into this new thing, this future they've prayed for.
Yeah.
But he's still got this huge loss he's dealing with. Bittersweet,
Life's rarely neat and tidy.
Yeah.
Right? We feel joy and sorrow often at the same time. But there's something hopeful about Isaac, I think.
What's that?
Even grieving, he's open to something new beginning.
It's like even if we don't have it all figured out, even if we're carrying pain, there's still space for love, for hope.
Exactly. That's something we can all connect to no matter what we're going through in life. There's always something new to discover, to experience a new chapter,
Makes you think about your own story, huh? If someone read it thousands of years from now.
Whoa, yeah.
What would they see? What moments of grief or trust, those unexpected things, what would feel really important to them?
Fascinating.
What would they say about you as a person? How you handled the unknown, finding hope even when it was tough.
Powerful thought. And honestly, that's what's so amazing about these old stories. They're not just about people from a long time ago. They're about being human.
We see ourselves in them.
Their struggles, what they celebrate, everything.
We've laughed, we've cried, and I think learned a little something about ourselves along the way.
I'd say so.
So next time you think you know a story, especially from the Bible, dig a little deeper. You might be surprised. Those hidden layers, emotional stuff, even wisdom that's still relevant today.
Truth.
Until next time on The Deep Dive, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep finding those hidden depths in every story you hear.